All right. Hi, everyone. I want to thank you for joining us today. And the Early Intervention Clearinghouse and Early Choices and Family Matters have partnered together and just to bring 5 monthly sessions through Zoom, and those are running January through May. And then these sessions are focusing, the focus of these sessions is to discuss information and resources that address early intervention and family outcomes. And so my name is Carrie Potter, and I am an information specialist with Family Matters. And then I am also the parent of a child who did receive early intervention services. And I just did want to say that this session will be recorded, like Tammy said, and then we will be able to share the link to all of these sessions at a later date. And I think the goal is for those to be shared through, Family Matters will share those, Early Choices can share those links, as well as the Early Intervention Clearinghouse. And then today's session, today is the second session of the 5. And today we wanted to talk about the importance of knowing your family's rights during early intervention. So I think, I can't understate how important it is to be aware of and understand your rights as a family in early intervention or any other system your child is involved in or getting services from. So I think it's important because the more you understand your child's rights, the more appropriately you can advocate for them. And the more that you know, the more you can identify and access services and programs that are available to your child or your family. Um, and I think as a parent or a caregiver, we always say, you know your child better than anybody else. You're an equal member of the early intervention team, and team members, other team members or professionals need to hear what you have to say, and they want to hear what you have to say. You have a lot of information that you see your child in a lot of different settings, at home and in the community, different places, and you have information from doctors and other professionals that you can share with early intervention team members. So again, you're an equal and critical part of that early intervention team. And like we said, the more that you understand your family's rights, the better you're going to be able to advocate for your child. Um, One thing that I think is important, I know in my role at Family Matters, sometimes I'm so used to the process that I use a lot of acronyms or abbreviations, and I think that can be true of any professional in any system. But a lot of times I tell families if I'm using acronyms or abbreviations for terms, then let me know if you don't know what that term means, because sometimes I do it without thinking. So I think it's always one of the ways to understand your rights is to ask questions. Never be worried about asking a professional or provider questions, or if you don't know what a term means, ask for more clarification on that. And that's something I try to be conscious about when working with families, to explain things or ask for understanding. But I think that, understanding your rights when questions, it's important to know about the system your child or family's getting services through. Because if a concern comes up or if you have a question, you know who to go to. Like an early intervention, maybe your child's getting services and they might be getting speech services, but you have concerns about their behaviors now and you're wondering if they could get further services. You could ask your service coordinator or your provider if there are other services that might be available to your child, or if there are other approaches that could be implemented within speech therapy, things like that. But I think it's really just knowing, building those relationships and knowing that you can ask questions and that those questions and concerns are welcome to be heard from providers and service coordinators and any early intervention staff. The more you know about different processes, the more it will help you prepare for different transitions. So early intervention, lasts until your child turns 3. And I think, as a family, you can get used to early intervention services, but it's important to ask questions ahead of time. What can I expect? Like, when can I expect to start the transition process? The more you know about that transition process and what services are available after early intervention, the more prepared you will be and your family will be for that transition process. But I think, again, just knowing to ask questions and asking where you can find information will really help families understand their rights in advocating for their child. So there are many general rights for parents and families in early intervention. I feel like I missed a slide. I did want to say, I think one of my slides is missing. So in early intervention in Illinois provides a variety of services for families of infants or toddlers, or starting at birth to age 3, who have a disability or developmental delay. And the program's based on the principle that all families help their children learn and grow. So again, early intervention is really geared towards involving the family and being family focused. And early intervention was established by Illinois law to comply with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And that's part of the federal regulations. So this act defines what a family's rights are and when that child's receiving early intervention services. So understanding, federal regulations or what's in those federal regulations is one way to understand your rights in early intervention. I wanted to talk about general rights as a parent in early intervention. So, families have a right to a multidisciplinary initial evaluation or assessment, and then have the right for an individualized family service plan meeting within 45 calendar days from referral if that child or family is found eligible. And then, if found eligible under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the family has the right to all appropriate early intervention services for the child and family, and those would be addressed in that individualized family service plan. And you have the right to an evaluation and assessment. You have the right to the development of the individualized family service plan and service coordination and procedural safeguards at no cost. And I think families are asked to submit insurance information and maybe charge for some early intervention services on a sliding scale fee, but the inability to pay does not prevent a child or family from receiving early intervention services. As a family, you do have the right to refuse evaluations, assessments, and services, and the right to participate in the initial IFSP development, and to have that plan reviewed every 6 months, or I believe more frequently if that's necessary. And you have the right to participate in an annual meeting regarding provision of services for your child. And then families do have the right to receive prior written notice before a member of the IFSP team would propose or refuse to change eligibility, evaluation, the location or environment where services are delivered to the child, or the provision of services to your child or family. And then that prior written notice should be provided in a timely manner. Families also have the right for services to be provided in the child's natural environment. I know that can look different, so you may have a conversation about where those services will take place. I know when my daughter was in early intervention, those services came to her since she wasn't going to daycare at that time, but had she went to daycare, some of those services may have been received in that setting. You have the right to your family's records being kept confidential and that information not being shared. You have the right to give your permission for written consent. So just to ensure that you agree with the activity or services that are being provided. And we'll go over these a little more in depth next. you have the right to examine records, so and if appropriate, have records corrected. So if there's something that's not accurate in the records, you do have the right to request that those would be corrected and amended. In some situations, if appropriate, you would have the right to have a surrogate parent appointed for children and who are wards of the state. And then there are rights to resolve your concerns and disagreements using administration resolutions if needed. And again, we'll go over these a little more in detail. So the early intervention program needs your permission before taking any action that affects your child. So informed consent means that you understand what happens if you give your consent, or you understand what happens if you don't give your consent. And providing consent means you're giving permission for you and your child to receive early intervention services. Um, and then you're asked to sign the IFSP document to show that you understand and agree with the plans and services that are identified. So once those services are identified and that plan is written, then you're going to be asked to sign that just to verify that you're agreeing you understand everything that's being put in place and that will be provided to your family. And then we said that information needs to be kept confidential. Information is only going to be shared with individuals and agencies identified on those forms. We talked about prior written notice. Written notice would be given to you before an agency or service provider makes a change in your child's early intervention services. And I said before, that has to be given in a timely manner. And the notice, that prior written notice, would be given to you in the language that you usually use. And then you should receive notice of any meeting, so you have reasonable time to make arrangements to make sure you're in attendance for those meetings. We talked about having the right to review records. So you have the right to review any records related to your child's early intervention services, and records would be given to you or made available to you within 10 calendar days after you make that request. And then again, you may make changes or make a request to make any changes in the record if the information is inaccurate or violates confidentiality. And then if there would be a refusal by the agency to review records, you do have the right to request a due process hearing. If you do not understand something in the record, again, I think it's always important to ask for things to be explained. There are multiple people within the early intervention process who can help with that. You can ask your service providers that provide services directly to your child. You can always contact your service coordinator or someone else within the early intervention service within the CFC or service providers to explain that to you so that you do have an understanding of that information in the records. Again, we said confidentiality is important, so all records of your family's early intervention services, again, are confidential, and then your providers are going to share information with each other to provide the best services to your family. Records will be shared with others only as strict privacy laws allow. Like we said before, it's probably going to be identified in the IFSP who records would be shared with. And then when you and your child are preparing to transition out of the early intervention program, you would need to sign written consent before your records would be shared with the local school district or any other agency that would serve your child at age 3. So if your child is being referred to the local public school district and early intervention is wanting to share that information, then you would need to sign consent allowing that to take place. Again, as we talked about, if you try to address concerns and they're unresolved, you do have different options through early intervention, such as making a complaint to the state, going through mediation or a due process hearing to try to resolve those issues. Um, in my job working with families in the school system, I always say it's important to have open communication and try to resolve those issues at the local level, but you do have options to pursue a complaint to the state mediation or due process. And it really, I think, depends on the situation, which option you would look into pursuing. And you could, look into what would be the appropriate next step if you've tried to resolve everything, at every level you could locally. There are multiple resources that we've included and compiled together for you that are helpful. I think one place to get started would be looking at a guide for families in the early intervention program that really explains rights. But we have multiple things provided here on the next few slides. Some of these are available in English and Spanish. If you as a family need those, or as a professional are wanting to provide these resources to families. And then the EI Clearinghouse, or Early Intervention Clearinghouse, does have different books available to be checked out, and we've included those on these slides that talk about IDEA and talk about IEPs and frequently asked questions. I've included information on Family Matters, so if you do have any questions about transition to school services, things like that, definitely give us a call or reach out by email. The Illinois Early Intervention Clearinghouse's information is here if you want to check out any of the resources that have been included in these slides or have any other questions about their services. They're more than happy to help you. I've also included information on early choices. Their contact information and website are all here. So, all of us are willing to work with you and help with any questions you may have. Again, I want to say that today's session has been recorded and will be shared at a later date. The link will be shared through our websites and social media, etc. And I do want to take time to open it for any questions. It looks like our next meeting will be held on March 3rd at the same time, and the topic will be helping your child develop and learn. So we hope to see you there.